Okay, today we are going to prepare the puff pastry. For that we are going to use today the mixer. This is a mixer, a dough mixer. It has a button to start, timer and a stop button. This is a rack, a security rack. So if you turn on the mixer and then you remove this, it's gonna turn off. If you want to stop it, it's better if you use this button. Push the red button, you know. Hoy vamos a utilizar la amasadora a modo demostrativo porque creo que es importante que ustedes conozcan esta máquina. Sin embargo, el mismo proceso se puede elaborar a mano porque va a ser un amasado de tiempo corto. En la máquina nos va a tomar alrededor de unos 5 minutos. A mano tomará unos 15 minutos. So we are going to start. For the puff pastry, the first step you have to prepare the dough. So for that you need the flour. You are going to use all-purpose flour. Okay. Salt. Butter. The recipe requires butter, and you are going to need to margarine. So the butter is for the dough, is for the first step. And you need water. So we are going to start 2 tiers of the water. We are going to add, and we will start to knead the dough. When the water starts to develop the dough, you will have to add the rest. So we are going to follow with this process for 3 or 4 minutes more, and then we will divide in portions. In this case, you will have to prepare 1 portion for the class, so we will not do that, but I will show you the dough when we finish. See you in the next video. Hey guys, after 5 minutes in the dough mixer, we get the dough, and you just see we didn't develop all the gluten because we have some stretch marks. You'll see it broke, and this is the consistency we needed. Okay, now what are we gonna do? If you have plastic wrap, you are going to cover with plastic wrap. In my case, I have paper. I have some plastic bags, so I will keep here. Okay, and remember you have to label the product you are going to keep in the fridge. So this is the puff pastry, and we are going to reserve in the fridge for all the night, almost 8 hours is okay. So see you in 8 hours. Okay, now I will show you the the margarine, we are going to use this kind of fat because it's more easy to learn to shape the layers in a puff pastry. So I buy this kind of margarine. As you see, it's a layer, a thickness layer of margarine. So I cut it in the portion I needed. This is the 300 grams we needed for the exercise. But if you can buy it, don't worry. I will show you how to shape this kind of rectangle or this kind of shape with a normal margarine. I have here some remindings. So you have to be sure it's a little soft, not like a room temperature, and you will need a plastic bag. Sorry. You will open and you have to put inside the margarine. The traditional puff pastry is with butter, but I repeat, in our environment and with our temperature, it's really complicated to do it. So that's the reason we use margarine, and actually it's a perfect option to practice this kind of doughs, because the technique is not easy. You have to learn it, and it takes some time to do it. So I believe you have to shape. You have to do this maybe in the afternoon, after 6 p.m. or maybe in the morning before 7 a.m. If you don't have air conditioner at your kitchen, it's better if you do it with this kind of temperature. So I'm going to use a rolling pin. So I'm going to do some. I'm going to beat a little, and it will shape. It doesn't have to be perfect. The only thing you need is to try to get the same texture all the margarine. Okay? So if you get this shape, it's okay. So we are going to use this shape. You can shape a rectangle if you want. You can shape it with your hands, and it's gonna be ready. So see you in the next video. I will go for the dough, and I will show you the process to shape a puff pastry. Okay guys, now we are going to shape we are going to prepare the puff pastry. For this you will need the dough. We prepared this dough one day before, so now it's really soft. I'm just removed from the fridge, and if you check in the image, it's really soft. So we are going to use a little of flour, a rolling pin, and probably I will use my scraper. So you have to read. So if you check the margarine, it's a room temperature. It's not really a room temperature. It's soft. So I'm going to show you how are we going to use it. First, I like to try to let thickness so lightly or less volume. I remove the volume. Try to get more flexibility. It's probably I have to say it. I push with my hands and my finger to get more flexibility. So I'm going to reserve. Spread some flour on the table and on the top of the dough. So I roll out the dough But check. In the middle, I try not to let too thin the dough, so let some thickness. Okay. Now I'm going to put here the dough, the margarine. I prefer to fold this part of this edge of the dough to the bottom, to the margarine, then turn this edge, the front edge, to the dough until push a little here to keep the portion together. In this part, I like to hit a little and then fold again, okay? So now I'm going to turn it, and if you look, it's like a package. So I'm going to roll out the dough. You will need some space. Don't push with a lot of energy. Everything you have to do is hit a little, because with this section, the margarine extend in the butter, in the dough, so that is better, because you will get a better texture, and it's gonna be more easy for you. Okay. Now you have to roll out. If you have this bubble, break it. You have to break it and try to keep together all the dough again. Roll out. Okay. If you see, when I move the dough on the table, it's like it sweeps, because I have a lot of flour on the table. It's not a lot, it's enough, it's a little. So I'm going to move here. Now I have a big portion of dough now, and we are going to fold. This is a double fold. I like to start with a double fold. So we are going to fold both edges until the middle, and then fold again. So this is the double fold. This is the first layers we are going to do. So the next step, if you have a plastic bag and you can keep it there, you have to cover. If you don't have, and you have plastic wrap, you have to do cover, and then and reserve two in the fridge for 20 minutes. So we are going to reserve the dough for 20 minutes, and then we are going to do the next. We will going to do the next step, okay? So, sorry, it's more complicated when you are alone, and my plastic bag is just a little portion now. So, take the portion of dough, cover with the plastic wrap, and reserve in the fridge for 20 minutes to follow the next step. So see you in 20 minutes. Okay, we are going to follow with the next step. Remove the plastic wrap. Don't put it in the trash, we will use again. So reserve. Spread some flour on the table. Okay. And we are going to roll out. The same. Now we are going to do a simple fold and let rest for another 20 minutes in the fridge. Something you have to remember, I didn't say, this is one side of the dough, and this is like imagine this is a book, and this here we have the paper clips or the page are here. So everything is to my right. That if you imagine you have to open the book, you have to imagine the pages are here, like, and I can open the book. Now, in this moment, it's 25, almost more than maybe 60 centimeters. Yeah, I probably. So I'm going to roll out a little more here, and then fold. This is going to be a simple fold. The double was this, but in this time we are going to do a simple fold. Okay, try to get a homogeneous form or shape, and use a plastic wrap, cover, and let rest for another 20 minutes. See you in 20 minutes. Okay, we will going to follow with the process. Okay, so spread some flour on the table, on the surface of the dough, and roll out that. If you see, it's with control. Try to go and back with the same energy. Okay. Ahora vamos a explicar un poco lo que hicimos. Extendimos la masa, cubrimos colocamos en el centro la margarina y posteriormente cubrimos. Extendimos y dimos una primera vuelta doble. Algo que ya expliqué constantemente es que esta parte que yo tengo a mi izquierda, en el caso de ustedes, lo van a, cuando lo vean, entiéndase que yo a mi lado izquierdo tengo el lomo de los dobleces, y de este lado tendría como las hojas si esto fuera un libro. Imaginando que esto es un libro, el lomo está de este lado y de este lado están las hojas. ¿Ok? Estamos dando la última vuelta. La última vuelta va a ser doble. Van a encontrar diferentes maneras de hacer el hojaldre. Hay quien recomienda hacer 4 vueltas simples. Yo, en mi experiencia, puedo decir que hacer una vuelta doble, una sencilla y una doble, es suficiente para obtener un buen hojaldrado. Entonces aquí vamos a extender un poco más. Si ustedes notan la diferencia de la masa, por eso son masas laminadas, laminate dough. Son masas laminadas. Estamos incorporando el elemento graso de esta manera. Siempre la masa debe tener harina en la parte de abajo que le permita resbalar. Y vamos a hacer una vuelta doble. Listo. Con esto es suficiente para obtener ya nuestra masa hojaldrada, o en inglés pastry, y la vamos a volver a guardar. Yo la voy a refrigerar por lo menos por una noche. El proceso es largo, sí, les va a tomar cerca de 2 días obtener una buena masa. Bueno, un día completo si pensamos que comenzamos ayer, y bueno, el día de mañana ya podremos que ahorita es de noche, en el video que estoy haciendo ahorita es de noche, y lo voy a dejar toda la noche en refrigeración. Podría dejarlo quizás solamente unas 2 o 3 horas, pero yo les recomiendo que lo hagan de esta manera. Entonces, por lo menos 8 horas de refrigeración, y va a ser mucho más fácil su manipulación el día de mañana. Nos vemos en 8 horas.
Okay, when you get the puff pastry ready, for extended dough, you're going to use a roll pin and a dough scraper. And be aware about get a container with a little bit of flour to dust the surface, to do a proper knead and a proper force with the rolling pin when you extend the puff pastry. One of the main things that you have to be aware when you handle your puff pastry is the room temperature and the ambience. Resting the dough is an exercise that you have to be aware, because the rest of the dough is going to be the thing that is going to extend the puff pastry and handle in a very good way. When you start using the rolling pin, you need to choose a rolling pin that needs to be dry and clean, because it is important to okay. You have to be aware when you choose a rolling pin, it needs to be dry and clean, because when you handle your puff pastry is one of the main things that needs to be important on your procedures. Dust the surface when you put your puff pastry on the table surface. It is important to get the extensibility and pliability of your dough. When you finish to extend the puff pastry, you're going to get a single sheet of puff pastry with 30 centimeters wide and 70 centimeters large, and the thickness is going to be about 1.5 millimeters. When you finish your puff pastry to do the extension, be aware about to cut all the edges of the puff pastry, because it is important to release all the pressure that you made with your rolling pin for do the thickness or proper thickness in your puff pastry dough. Okay, when you finish to cut the edges, you're going to pick it up your puff pastry and dust and sprinkle a little bit of sugar on the surface. We return the basic rectangle of puff pastry to the sugar, and then we are going to do the same exercise on the top of the surface. Be gentle with the sugar, because the palmiers or the orejas, one of the main characteristics is to get a little to get some sugar. We are going to repeat in the top of the surface, we are going to sprinkle a little bit of sugar, because one of the main characteristics that the orejas and the palmiers has is to, when it's in the baking in the oven, it's going to caramelize and develop a good crust on the sugar. When you start to folding, you have to divide your rectangle in 4 parts and fold it into the center. It is important to get the exercise in the video and get the visual right, because it's going to get the form of the palmier, and with the help of the sugar you're going to stick the form and finish with the rolling pin. to get the proper figure of the palmier. When you finish to fold the palmier, it's going to get the figure of a double fold. If you see it on the beginning of the puff pastry, you're going to see a double fold. And then you need to start to cutting with a knife, and be aware that your palmier get all the sugar stick to the figure and the puff pastry. For the cutting of the palmier, you're going to cut palmiers about 1 centimeter thick, and when you finish to cut it, you're going to put the forms of the puff pastry in a sheet pan with parchment paper. Using a sheet pan with parchment paper, we are going to align the palmiers in 4-4-3. The reason why is to get all the heat of the oven in all the sheet pan in order to cook and get all our production in a standard way. Be aware about the spaces. When your palmiers are ready in the sheet pan, one of the things is that you are going to bake it to 180 degrees Celsius for 20 to 25 minutes, depending on the oven and depending on the ambience. One of the options that we got for make up your palmiers is going to sprinkle a little bit of sugar on the top and get a proper and decent shine when the palmier is ready in the oven. Well, with the same amount of puff pastry, we are going to repeat the same exercise to do our basic rectangle about 30-inch wide and 70-inch large. Now we are going to cut it on 3, the basic rectangle, with the help of a knife, carefully. And we are going to do the same with a measure of 10 centimeters, doing a form of a square. This square is going to fill it with some cream cheese for making a sweet cheese balls. Okay, putting on the center of the square, we're going to put the cream cheese and sticking the corners of the square, we are going to build a little sphere with the cream cheese on the center. When you close the 4 corners of the square, it is important to get the flip on the right way when you turn off the figure at the surface. All the points on all the corners needs to point down at the surface because you need to close the figure and doesn't escape all the cream cheese in the baking. Okay, for makeup and panning the figure, we are going to finish with the spray gun and spray it with water, and then we are going to panning or cover it with a little bit of sugar on the top of the figure. Don't forget to face down all the points and corners for that the cream cheese balls don't escape all the filling. Now, doing the same exercise with the puff pastry, we are going to do a traditional bread of Yucatan that got the name of hojaldra with ham and cheese. For this traditional bread, we are going to use the puff pastry, ham and cheese, jalapeno chili, and a little bit of egg for garnish. In this case, we are going to extend the puff pastry in half sheet pan, and we are going to spread the ham and the cheese all over the puff pastry in the base. Once the ham and cheese is spread in all the puff pastry, we need to be sure that it's a good amount of ham and cheese, and then we are going to put some jalapeno. And then when the ham and the cheese with the chili jalapeno it's ready, we are going to garnish with some egg all the edges for put the lid or the cover of the puff pastry for the hojaldra. In this case, you have to be aware that all the edges needs to be brushed with the mixture of the egg, and then we are going to proceed to put the cover of the hojaldra over the ham and the cheese with the jalapeno chili. Carefully you need to put the cover and stick all the cover of puff pastry on the edges, and the egg is going to get the function of the glue in the hojaldra. Depending on the size of your sheet pan, it's going to be the portion or size of your hojaldra that you are going to cut it with the help of the knife. You have to remember to use the knife carefully when you cut it on the sheet pan. Take care about your fingers and your hand. One of the important parts about the form of this traditional bread in Yucatan is that you can choose the form when you cut the portion size. It can be rectangles, it can be squares, or it can be circles. It depends the portion or size that you may need and the aesthetics that you want to in your finish when you finish your traditional bread. Okay. When you start make up and panning your traditional bread hojaldra, you have to be aware to sprinkle a little bit of water and then the sugar, because you need to caramelize in the baking and get the light crust that is a main characteristic of this traditional bread. Good. Okay, with the remainder we are going to do some banderillas. That is a classic bread in Mexican bakery. The main characteristics of the banderillas is a lightly sugar coated and the caramelization of this in the oven. Okay. For this puff pastry dough, we are going to extend in a basic rectangle and we are going to divide it on 3. For the figure, it's called peinetas. The peinetas is a figure that consists on the filling with marmalade or pastry cream, and then we are going to close and cut it with a knife for do the figure. For closing the peinetas, we are going to close with a little bit of egg wash, and with the help of a brush we are going to paint all the edges of the peinetas. The function of the egg wash is acting like glue and close the figure, and in that form keep the filling in the figure. As we see on the video, you have to cut it with the help of the knife and do a little drizzle, helping you with the knife and your finger. Careful about the cuttings. And when you finish to cut the lines or the drizzles, we are going to cut the peineta about 10 centimeters wide. Be careful about the cutting and the standard size. For finish the peinetas, we are going to brush with some egg wash all the figure. Careful about the detail, and for finish you have to be aware that all the peinetas got the same finish.
Okay, and now you can see the final result of the puff pastry dough. Here we have the cheesy balls, okay, cheesy cream cheese balls. Here we have the peinettes, okay, filled with strawberry jam. In this case we have the mini palmiers, okay, o mini orejas, como podríamos decir aquí en México, ¿sí? Y en este caso tenemos aquí las mini hojaldras de jamón con queso. Okay, so all of those breads were in the oven for around 20 to 25 minutes. You gotta make sure the temperature of your oven goes around 180. If you're baking in a home stove, okay, in a home stove, maybe you can turn the stove onto 200 Celsius, where you can have a good heat distribution, and you can get this color that it's the final touch in the end. But well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and see you next time.